On May 21st, 2023, there was a second gathering of former Ohev members gathered at the home of Neil and Michelle Deitch. All but two were members of the Deitch family, but everyone added to the conversation. The Deitch family history at Ohev goes back 4 generations, and you will hear memories of Ohev life at 7th and Sandusky and the special family atmosphere and volunteer culture that continued to characterize Ohev when it moved to Prairie Village. Lisa and Sabina Skolnick, not part of the Deitch family, added their memories from the Prairie Village years and shared what they appreciated most about the congregation and why it was such a good fit for them. The participants were Lois Clayman, Charity Deitch, Neil Deitch, Michelle Deitch, Sam Deitch, Marcia Fagan, Sherry Rabikoff, Janice Sandler, Mike Sandler, Lisa Skolnick, and Sabina Skolnick.
All right, well, okay, well, I just thought we would welcome all of you here and just get started with a little brief summary of your experience at Ohev, those things that were most meaningful about the synagogue to all of us. And I guess I could start, I've spent, my early days, 2 days a week and Sundays at Ohev Sholom ever since I was a little boy. So a lot of time spent in that synagogue. And so I do have a lot of memories that helped form who I am today. Friends that I've met through Sunday school and Hebrew school that I still have today. Learned how to read Hebrew and the traditions associated with our religion. And I think all of that has just been very formative to who I am. But feel free to jump in here. Anyone else want to talk a little
Well,
bit?
I remember Ohev when it was started in Kansas City, Kansas, and I remember sitting on the very top balcony, looking down because the women had to sit upstairs and the children had to sit upstairs. That's my first memory of Ohev, and then just thinking of Ohev as just as one big family. And then when they moved to Prairie Village, I always thought of it as Little House on the Prairie, just like the movie. Just from being at Ohev, it was just family oriented, and you always felt that you were always with someone who cared about you.
Ohev was like a second, I don't know if you'd say home to me. We went in my day to Hebrew school 4 days a week, and it was very social. We'd ride the bus to 7th and Minnesota, and then we'd walk down to 7th and Sandusky. And in between, we'd stop at the pharmacy, Harry Abrams Pharmacy, and get a candy bar. And we'd go, we had Hebrew school from 4:30 to 6, Monday through Thursday, and we would go back for Sunday school. But we had our group, and it was fun. We didn't feel that we were pushed into it. I mean, it was just part of our lives, and we never questioned it. And we knew everybody. When you grow up in it was basically a smaller congregation, and I was a bas mitzvah, I was confirmed, my wedding was at Ohev. It was just, we learned about, of course, all the holidays, and in blessed memory, Rabbi Marshall Miller was our teacher all through the time, and it was just, and it was hard. It was a little change when we moved. I like that, Janice, on the prairie. And it was been very hard for us to combine with Beth Shalom, although they've been very warm and giving. But Ohev was our life. We all grew up there, and we were 4 generations there.
Yeah, I know the importance of Ohev and Rabbi Miller. I mean, he even named me, so, and the relationship our mother had with all the rabbis there was very close.
Yeah.
And,
That's true. I remember many things. Most of my memories are in childhood, because I moved away when the synagogue moved away to Prairie Village. So my memories are very fond and loving memories, same as everyone else. I remember Shirley Levine teaching us songs. I remember plays that we had, and I remember sitting upstairs in the balcony with my friend Felice and Leah Miller remember just many, many good times. And I remember that the congregation would always comment when we all came in. For Janice putting the children, little, crawling on the floor at the synagogue. They sat in the front row.
Our
On the
kids.
benches, yeah, remember
Yeah.
your children, I do remember that. And I remember going to synagogue every Saturday when I came home to visit the family and my mother. My mother loved the synagogue, and she was ready before I was. She was ready to go. And I remember wonderful times there, and she reintroduced me to all the family because I moved away when I got married, and I lived away for 50 years, so I don't have a whole lot of memories of the synagogue as I was a little older, except for the Saturdays when I came in with Mom.
I'll just never forget learning from Leah Miller. She was so patient and so good. And I always used to get in trouble for talking too much and being too social. And memories of just being together with family. We always got along. We really never argued. And to be there surrounded with our family was so special. It gave me a sense of pride and belonging. And I did move away for a lot of years, and I always knew I would be back here. And I have very, very good memories of Ohev and family and getting together and all the programs they had. It was a wonderful experience. I feel very lucky to have had that.
I remember riding on the bus to Hebrew school, and Dad, my father, knew where we were, and when Janice was born, he drove by a bus and said, "You have a new baby sister?" And so we were all so excited. And we had Passover Seders. It was just a very warm congregation. And when you grow up knowing almost everybody, it was all like family. And we miss it.
So my question would be, we've got people who are lifelong members, whether you signed up for it or not, your parents joined there, but Lisa, what about you and Sabina? Because your perspective is a little bit different because you joined it. You weren't born into the synagogue, but you joined it.
So we joined when I was a pre-bat mitzvah, same with my brother, who's 2 years younger. And we were welcomed with warm arms, and I remember Sunday school down in the little classrooms on the lower level, and Orit would teach us the Hebrew alphabet and the prayers, and we sat in a little U-shaped desk formation, and there was about less than a dozen of us. And Sylvia White really helped mentor and guide me for my bat mitzvah. I recall us being in the sanctuary, just the two of us practicing the blessings, where I would stand and walk with the Torah. She was really helpful in that, and Rabbi White also helped mentor me for the big day.
And you also got to spend a lot of time with Rabbi Rudnick, who...
Rabbi Redneck, yes. We would do Ein Kalheinu and Adon Olam every Saturday to a different tune, and it would always be somehow related to present day or what was going on or the season. It was special because he would call up all the kids from the sanctuary to come say the blessings together.
And I think one of the things that the older generation has talked about is being small and it feeling like a family. And we moved to Kansas City, David, my husband, and I, it's been 25 years. And we only joined a synagogue when our daughter was born because we needed to get her name. So, and we started our synagogue life at Sholom, and we just found over time that it was too big for us, and really felt like we were just a little bit, being new and not knowing all these families that knew each other for years and years. We were looking for a more intimate environment to raise our kids and have their Jewishness nurtured. And so about 14 years ago, we made the move, probably right after Rabbi Cohen left Beth Shalom. We made the move to Ohev. We had met Rabbi White, and we're just, we clicked with him. And really, we enjoyed coming to services on Saturdays and hearing what he had to say when it was time for him to speak. And I actually was never bat mitzvahed, so I went ahead and had an adult bat mitzvah. Within 5 years, I had mine, she had hers, and our son 2 years after had his. So we were like the Skolnick B'nai Mitzvot train, and just, had wonderful support. And really, it's sad for us to see Ohev lose its identity as a standalone entity, but Beth Sholom has been very welcome with open arms. And I think going back there, having started there, we are different. And that makes our experience there different because we've been so enriched by our time at Ohev.
Can my family, my father had 5 sisters, the Sandlers, and the sisters all were married, and some of them lived in Kansas City, Kansas. Some of them lived in Kansas City, Missouri. The Kansas City, Kansas members all went to Ohev in Kansas City, Kansas. That was the Fishmans and the Mallons. And we went to Beth Sholom, but we were always pretty close with everything. I didn't have my first experience was when I started dating my wife Janice, that I started going to services at Ohev Sholom, and we were the first function at the main sanctuary. Our wedding was the first wedding there. We got married in 1970. That was the first function that they had at the new sanctuary. The other thing I remember about Ohev, I volunteered to go to morning minions, and my uncle Harold was big into going to morning minions, and he kind of taught me about Harold Mallon. He kind of taught me about how important it was to be there for other people. We had a really good group of people that came to morning minion to make sure there was 10. Marvin Denton always would give me a call. I hated that call at night. I didn't show up for morning minion, but he was, he kept us going and he kept us together, and we were kind of go to the morning minion and we go out to breakfast afterwards. And it was a really nice experience.
Our mother used to bake. At that time, if you kept kosher, you could bring your pastries and whatever into Ohev. And I'll never forget the time that she had baked this cake, and she was going to, the person who bought the cake, or it was a raffle of some sort, was going to share it with Ruthine Simon. And so they went to cut the cake, and the knife wouldn't go through. And Mother said Sherry had helped her bake the cake, and they were missing a spoon, and that was in the cake.
I didn't realize that story.
Yeah.
I was a little mischievous.
The synagogue used to have, I guess it was like a flea market, and everybody brought their wares, and on a Sunday, they would have a flea market for another fundraiser. Those were fun to have. And then, of course, they did the Kosher Fest.
I know you were involved in this.
Oh, yeah, that Kosher Fest was amazing.
I was one of the first kosher fests that we had. Mary Birnbaum and I were in charge. Ohev was just a part of our family. And we all miss it, I know.
Ohev had a group that was just such hard workers. I've never seen that at any synagogue or temple where they just, not a big group, a small group, and not young.
No.
They,
We all worked for that. We did. We all had a part of it.
I wasn't here.
Did we make any money at Kosher Fest? Or we
Yes,
just
they
worked,
did.
just worked really
And I
hard?
remember you being a part of it.
Oh, it was a hard work. Also,
Did you do something with the Russians?
yes, I was in charge of the mitzvah committee and didn't realize it entailed welcoming the Russian people that were coming in, and we did 10 families, and they came with nothing. And we did from the kitchen to the towels to the furniture to, it was really, really a difficult time. And, but we did it, and it was so gratifying experience for me. And I knew that my family would all help. And whatever I signed up for, I was never worried because I knew that
Yeah, we were all
everybody
kind of
would help
drafted
me.
into service.
Yeah.
What's that?
We were.
I-
And Sam, I mean, you had your wedding there. I think the last wedding at Ohev.
Yeah, probably, yeah,
I had the last wedding and I had the first wedding.
Yeah.
That's
Full circle.
Yeah,
Full
but,
circle.
yeah, growing, I've always been so blessed with this close, warm Jewish family that I've grown up in, and Ohev was just a natural extension of that. It was same familial attitude, and everybody was very welcoming and kind. And it's always been kind of constant throughout lives, you know, these big steps, these big, bar mitzvah, weddings, birth of children, things like that. Ohev's always been tying those things together. So Ohev has been a big portion of who I've been in my life experiences, and it's been this kind, welcoming community, and it's affected a lot of people so positive, and the memory of Ohev is so important still.
You were on the board, weren't you? When did you get on the board?
Board for a few years.
Yes, he was on the board.
It's kind of interesting, your comment about you enjoy the warmth of Ohev, and it has transferred over to Ben Sholom
It
now.
wasn't small.
You enjoyed that initially, and that seemed to form a bit of your attitude toward the other
I
congregation.
think when I walk into services at Beth Shalom, I look for my Ohev people, and my Ohev people are there, and it's really lovely. It's like we haven't lost it. They're just in a different space.
That's a good way it is, yeah.
Yeah.
It is very good.
So, what kept you at Ohev? You got there, why did you stay? What kept you connected to Ohev and not join another congregation?
Are you asking me?
Anybody?
Anybody? I'm just asking.
I wasn't allowed to ever go in that to another congregation.
Yeah, it was really not an option. It didn't feel like an option to go to another synagogue.
And I would argue for us who chose, we didn't come from the family line of Ohev. When you found your place that you're comfortable and you're happy, why would you ever look elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
I often wondered now when I think back, when we were on 7th and Sandusky, there was no, of course, elevator, and there was all those stairs. And I thought about our grandmother Deitch, and how did she walk up all those stairs? But she did, and we all did. And my husband Alvin hadn't belonged to a synagogue till we got married, and he felt very much at home at Ohev and was close with the rabbis.
That was a special time with our parents.
Yeah.
Very special.
My two uncles were president of the synagogue, Mo Deitch and Harry Deitch, and my father worked in the stores, kept the store going so they could be active in the synagogue. And I was very proud of, of them. And
Yeah, you felt a real connection.
what?
There's a real connection, real solid attachment to the synagogue
Yes,
as a
it was.
concept and
It
as
was
a place of.
And being the oldest, I am. My closest and dearest friends were still from the synagogue. And as I said, it was our social time. And they had, we had Saturday night, what do you call them?
get-togethers or
Well, they were,
social?
so,
Hot
but,
dog services?
no,
Hot
no, I love Havdalah. No, it was just mixers is what we called them in those days. And we'd have them, and others would come from other synagogues and join. And,
Well, it was the people that made Ohev, what
Yes.
it was. I mean, you might have been individual families, but then you were one whole
whole family.
community. It was just Ohev. And if there was something sad that happened to one part of the family, Ohev just was gravitated to you to make you feel more comfortable and warm. And then if there was a happy time, my gosh, they all knew and congratulated you for different things. I don't know, that it was the people
It
that
was.
Ohev had that made it so special.
And I don't think I had ever seen in my life a volunteer corps that was, I mean, when you think about who the professional people were who were on the payroll, like there were like 3, 4 maybe. I mean, every event, and there were events every week. It was all volunteer run, all volunteer driven. And I think Beth Sholom now, you know, because like we're on the board of the combined entity now, and to hear the Beth Sholom people talk about how so incredibly engaged the Ohev people are, I mean, they just kind of came in and swept them off their feet.
I
Are
know
there
when
any
I
programs, concerts, events that, besides Kosher Fest that come to mind?
Remember that first concert we had? I think I was in charge. And then I had the night before the concert, the board members were at our house to a special. He was called the jukebox pianist, I believe. And
David Stein.
yes, that was his name. Were you there the night before at
Yeah.
my house?
You didn't invite me.
No, we were on the board. Well, anyway, and it was really a lovely occasion. And then I think the concert brought in a lot of, it was a nice moneymaker for us.
Yeah, that reminds us of the 130th you were just talking about, that we were the co-chairs of the 130th anniversary at Ohev.
Right.
Yes.
And what were you?
Well, I was just gonna say, I
Were you
grew
there
up
for
at
the
Beth
concert?
Sholom, and then when we got married, we moved over to Ohev. And the people were so warm and welcoming, and the family was all there, so it's been a great experience with the kids going there and all their activities and events. It's been now we're back at Beth Sholom.
Our mother celebrated her 100th birthday at Ohev,
That's right.
and there were 250 people there. The whole synagogue came, and it was a
Quite
wonderful
nice.
time for her.
Well,
Well,
I do remember these fundraisers now that you bring them up. You know, I remember, I don't know how long ago it was, but they'd have movies in those days, and they'd rent a whole theater out. And I remember seeing, that's where I saw the movie Soylent Green, and that was their
That
their
was
fundraiser.
Well, that was kosher, wasn't it?
But it brought in a lot of people. It was at the, what was that
Was
place?
it the Glenwood?
Glenwood Theater, right?
Oh,
It was at the old
Glenwood.
Glenwood Theater.
I forgot.
I don't even know if we were married then. We may not have been married, are we?
I don't know, I can't remember.
Can't remember how many years ago
They
that
probably
was.
sealed the marriage right there.
There.
Bringing it together.
and our kids got their Hebrew names there, all of our
the
children.
naming.
The,
Yeah, the
the name got all their Hebrew names.
Yeah, all the life events.
All
The
are
naming, the
especially
bar
events.
mitzvahs, the bat mitzvahs.
Of course, they
the
don't
weddings.
remember my
The
bar
bris.
mitzvah as much.
Brisses.
Brisk,
Yeah.
yeah.
Didn't Rabbi Miller pick your Hebrew name
Yeah, he sure did.
for you?
Yeah.
How come you
It
couldn't
means
spell it right?
miracle. Does it not mean
Miracle
miracle?
happened.
Yeah,
Yes.
not time.
Yes. After
Yes.
4 girls having one boy.
Just the importance of the synagogue and the community in our family was very intense. I mean, it was, you know, our parents' mother had a close relationship with Leah.
Oh,
and-
yes.
And Rabbi
They were
Marshall.
best
Right.
friends.
And then to look to the rabbi to help name one of the children. And it goes to show you the close attachment that synagogue created in the members during those early years. And has really continued to the present.
I think so. When I moved back, I helped out in the kitchen, and that was really a good experience for me to work with the women there.
The Homentations were fantastic. Thinking about it.
That's right.
Oh,
That was a good
When
one.
our kids were young, they had a youth group, and you took them on a bike ride once. Do you remember that? I went on a bike ride.
I don't remember.
Oh,
And they had a good youth group, even though it was small. It was small, it was good.
we had bingo, and
Oh, yeah.
yes, and it was a very nice moneymaker, and I used to work in the kitchen. We made chili and pineapple upside down cakes and all sorts of cakes, and I did learn a lot from Phyllis Denton and Carol Offenbach, and it was fun when we all worked together.
When you mentioned Carol and Homentations, when our kids first came to Ohev, she introduced herself. She says, "I'm the frog lady."
Oh,
And she shows them her earrings, and she's, very, let them know she was the Homentashen lady as well.
That's how she was for me too. I remember she was the frog lady
Yeah, the
always.
frog lady.
Yeah,
The frog
that's how we remember.
But it was food too. It was always wonderful foods, the kiddish luncheons. I remember we'd get cabbage rolls for years.
Oh,
Yeah.
Delicious. Yeah. Kosher fast foods.
Yes, Kosher Fest. It was, those cabbage rolls were hard to make. I only made, I don't know, a couple hundred. Oh,
We go for some right now.
To make it kiddish after Saturday morning service was somewhat unique, isn't it? Among
Yes.
synagogues, I think that it started at Ohev from what I recall, and kind of started to spread. That was one way of food, bringing people together and celebrating
yes. It sure did.
It was a good hamburger place.
It makes me happy that the owners of Ohev now are a child care. I mean, it makes me
Yes.
happy that their kid's there.
yes.
and the building, the structure will still be there, which is nice.
It is probably one of the most unique child care buildings.
And there's actually a cornerstone in the building that says
It
Ohev
was
Shalom,
really
so
nice.
Yeah, sanctuary.
there's a great,
Where at
a large
Ohev.
area that says that, will always say that. So,
What'd you say?
so there's a cornerstone in that building.
Yes, we have that, don't we?
No, that's in that building. The only way you get that building is if you no longer have that building.
That's right, I just saw a picture of it.
Yeah.
I remember Rabbi Rednick chanting on Yom Kippur, kind of ascending the podium in his white robe, and his voice always filled the sanctuary, and that was a very
Yeah, that's
poignant
right.
memory I have of High Holidays. And then a separate memory being that Rabbi White would always kind of call out special people in the audience when he would speak and give a sermon. He would say a congratulations or an accomplishment and acknowledge someone in the room. I know coming back from travels or college, making a special visit for Shabbat services, he always made a point to notice us and acknowledge what we had done and to make us feel welcome back.
Yeah, Rabbi Horowitz always had an excellent devar for, he always gave a very nice
Who did?
sermon.
Horowitz,
Yeah.
oh, he had the best sermons in town.
But Rabbi Horowitz was also probably one of the smartest rabbis we ever had.
Brilliant,
I remember we were doing morning minions we'd go on Tuesday and Thursday when they would read the Torah. And we had nobody to read the Torah, so we hired a kid from the Hebrew Academy and paid him every Tuesday and Thursday to read the Torah. And the first day Rabbi Horowitz shows up, he didn't have to come to morning minion, but he came his first day there. And this kid starts to read the Torah, and Rabbi Horowitz says, "It's not the section." And it turned out the kid was reading the same section every week and not doing a different section. He didn't know any better. And Horowitz picked it up and started reading the Torah right from the beginning, and of course we had to fire the kid from the Hebrew. Horowitz was a very, very smart guy.
He's in Houston now.
You know,
He's
I was pretty impressed with that. 'Cause we were sitting there, we didn't know what the section was. We just showed up and did our aliyahs and left.
But Rabbi White could always engage you. I mean, there was really something about Rabbi White I always liked. He was always very, he could relate to a variety of people. I mean, regardless of their degree of observance, he was able to have a relationship with them, speak to their interests too.
And I appreciate his journalism background, and he would always speak about things that were current events. Like if
Yeah.
something happened during the week in the news internationally, you could almost bet that he would in some way incorporate it into what he said on Saturday.
Right.
He had a great pulse on everything that was happening in the
He
world,
did.
especially with Israel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you had to be careful not to be too political. It was hard, I think, not to, but he was great in that.
You know, when I think of Ohev, I was thinking of my grandma Ann, because she was, and it's been mentioned already, she was a kind of a pillar of the community though in her life. It was, but one of my enduring memories of her is her standing during services and reading from the prayer book, and this is a very weekly important part of her life, and I picture her as kind of as intertwined with Ohev.
But mother,
mother.
that was true.
She learned Hebrew when she was 80.
No, she was in her 70s.
Well, she always took classes there. She
Yeah,
wanted
she was
to
very,
enlarge her understanding of everything. She took any classes. I took some classes with her too.
I remember sitting with Uncle Louie during Yom Kippur, and you know, Mother, he would say, you know, your mother made me come to services again.
Yeah, you know your mother made me come.
Yeah, it was Uncle Louie there. He would show me what he was doing, you know, but she was able to kind of bring the family together around Ohev, really. The aunts, her sisters, I mean, she kind of was a magnet. Really, for the
Yes.
synagogue.
Oh, Michael, I remember on Yom Kippur, you would stay with Mother, would not come home till the very end.
Yeah, we had kind of a contest to see who could stay in services the longest and not eat until we got home.
That was,
We'd
yeah.
come in home about 8 o'clock and she would not eat until I ate.
Tell you what, it's true.
It was kind of a contest to see who could hold out the longest.
Charity and I got married in 2013, and we wanted it to be at Ohev, so we were planning on doing the ceremony there, but we didn't think Ohev was large enough to fit everyone, so we were going to have the party somewhere else. But then we were just talking with Steve Berman, who was the executive director, and we figured out that we could squeeze all 250 people into the sanctuary downstairs.
Yeah.
We were just so happy to be able to do it there, but it was really neat. It just turned out to
It
be
was,
there.
yeah. We were in Buffalo at the time because Sam was finishing his PhD, and so I was planning the wedding from afar, and it was supposed to be over at another synagogue. The party was the reception, the party, and so a month before, I told her, I said, I want to change my mind, my heart, and she just, the wedding planner just freaked out. I was like, how are we gonna fit that many people down, downstairs, and
It was in
I think-
Waldman Hall.
yeah, and I think it was 275
But
people.
it was one of the prettiest, I mean.
Yeah,
it
we
was wonderful.
squeezed everybody in there somehow. We were able to fit, and I think actually the list somehow grew.
The kitchen down below.
But it worked easier because then everyone could,
Waldman
after
Hall
the
was the
ceremony, go
place.
downstairs. So
No,
I
what was the room upstairs?
That was Waldman Hall.
Upstairs was Waldman, downstairs was Asner.
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 So when
There
we
we
got
go.
married,
Yeah.
we had,
Asner
Elsner
Hall.
Hall.
You were
after the wedding, we had upstairs at Waldman Hall, and then we went downstairs for the dinner and everything.
Well, we couldn't, in Sandusky, without air conditioning, June 30th, after the ceremony, we had to go to the Townhouse Hotel, which is now a retirement. Oh my, and we did.
I remember the women of Ohev were personal friends. I remember Mother setting up for a mahjong game, and all the ladies that came were from Ohev.
Well, yeah.
They had very definite friendships. So that's a lot of what Ohev brought. Friendships and
Extended family.
Extended
Family. We all felt a part of this large family.
So you guys talked a lot about the warmth and the closeness of Ohev, and the question really is, it's like, how did that get born? How did the warmth, how did the closeness get developed over time?
How did it get?
Like the warmth and development and the closeness of the congregants, how did that get developed over time? I mean,
We were welcome. Yeah, we were smaller, and we always welcomed everybody. Mother was really welcoming. Everybody there knew our mother.
Well, it was from the first generation of Ohev.
No, second, Grandma died.
Well, I'm saying the first generation of Ohev was so, the warmth and strength that they had, and it just carried on to the next and the next and the next.
We were all from a very small community in Kansas City, Kansas. I mean, we're talking about maybe a 20-block area. It wasn't like all spread out like it is today. They were all neighbors. They weren't that far apart. I mean, my uncle Harold Mallon and lived within blocks of the Deitches. It wasn't very far. Everything was close.
Oh, it was wonderful memories and good
I
times.
think they all had a similar goal too. It wasn't a large Jewish community, it was a smaller Jewish community, and they wanted to work together to enhance the strength of the Jewish community there. And I think that led to greater cohesion among the groups. So it made the families connect with each other, making for a more solid Jewish identity at that time. And then it just really persisted to the present.
And then children moved away, out of town, and it just got smaller and smaller, back to small.
True. But looking at some of those photos, those pictures of the large Israeli bond dinners that they had.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember those.
You were honored at an Israeli bond dinner, right?
Oh yeah, we had the Israeli bond dinners. Mom was honored for a couple of things. And then Alvin and I were honored at the Israeli bond dinner. And we sold a lot of bonds that night.
Yeah, each individual person had responsibilities because it couldn't be shared. I mean, that could have contributed to the current cohesion of it.
I still have one.
Israeli bond?
Yes,
It could be worth some money
I
now.
saved it. Like I saved.
Could be worth some money.
I just saved
Yeah,
it.
an Israeli.
I do. I couldn't do anything. I just had to save it.
Well, talk a little more about this Israeli bond dinner. I mean, what came about of it? Why was it specifically just for Ohev to raise money, or was it something that the entire Jewish community was a part of? Can you elaborate a little bit more
I
on
think
that?
each of the synagogues
had
did a bond dinner, and we had one, and Beth Sholom had one, and KI had one, and all the different synagogues and temples had Israeli bond dinners. It was just we happened to have a really good one. Black tie, it was a nice affair.
And we used to dress up.
That's what I'm saying, it's
Yeah.
black tie, everybody was dressed up.
But Saturday morning services, we all dressed up.
Oh, yes, we wore heels and.
Everything,
Yes,
but
and
now
bells.
it's changed quite a bit, which is fun. I mean, it's just how things change.
And too, at Ohev, you couldn't, if you were a stranger and you walked into services, you could not be left alone. People would greet you and welcome you and introduce you. And yeah, you would never, people would always notice you and want to welcome you to the community.
It's not always like that at the large congregations.
So, let's talk a little bit about the Kansas City, Kansas Jewish community and Ohev's impact on it. Because I mean, for me, I'm more familiar with everything coming out south. Just for me, and especially Ohev being at 75th and Null. So I'm not very familiar with with KCK and that 20-block radius or whatever that might have been up there. Let's talk a little bit about the history and how where all the Jews were, why they were there in Wyandotte, and then how it kind of moved out this way. It moved out south. Obviously, the Jews moved this way, but what happened?
Some of them originally come from St. Joe.
Yeah, a lot of families were from St. Joe. And
to Kansas.
a lot of the merchants were on Minnesota Avenue. And then,
Joel, your parents never lived in Kansas City, Kansas, though, did they?
Yeah.
They
Yeah, they
did?
did.
They lived there too, okay.
A lot of them walked to synagogue, so they had to live close.
Yeah.
It was more
It was
Orthodox.
Orthodox in Kansas City, Kansas, where they had divided women and men.
So the original Ohev synagogue was men and women divided?
Right,
Gotcha. And that was in Kansas City, Kansas?
yes.
Yeah.
So was it Orthodox?
we were Orthodox, but like I said, you could bring, if you lived in a kosher home, you could bring into the synagogue. The rabbis allowed that, Rabbi Miller was.
Yeah, originally it was Orthodox.
My mother had 2 sets of, milk cookies.
Well, that's kosher,
I
yeah.
hadn't had a cheeseburger till I went to
Maybe we should talk a little about the relationship with Asbury Church, because they've been seems to have been very supportive of Ohev in terms of, facilities needs and parking and services, and even now Shir LaShabbat services are still held there to really keep a foothold in the Northland. The Northland being, some people say north of 95th, some people say north of 75th. And areas even more north than that, but I haven't had much experience with them, but they seem to have been really great neighbors, partners, spiritual
They were.
companions.
They are.
Yeah, they were great.
Didn't the synagogue dedicate a certain location for Asbury members if they ever wanted to come to our services?
Well, our synagogue used to invite didn't they invite
Yes,
different churches to
different
come in
churches and come
to
there.
see our
But I think they had
service?
such a strong relationship with the church.
Asbury, because
With
they,
Asbury,
Well, I think it was the rabbi
the
got
rabbi,
close maybe with,
with the,
So why did you decide to join the board? What made you feel that was your calling?
Well, I think as always with OHEB, people ask for volunteers, and if I'm asked specifically, I feel obligated to help out in some way.
So how did the organization, why was it so volunteer driven? Someone mentioned that there was 3 or 4 paid positions and that was it, and the rest of the synagogue was completely volunteer run, which is contrary to a lot of the other synagogues in the area. So why did that come around? How did it come around to be such a volunteer heavy organization?
I think people from Ohev just cared. They wanted it.
And the recruitment efforts were great. I remember even when after I converted and the sisterhood would call me, and it would be every couple of weeks someone would call from the sisterhood and check in and just say, how are you doing? How are things going? We're having an event. And there was, whether it be Carol Offenbach or Mary Birnbaum or Sally, everyone really cared about, all the different events that they would hold, but they would also bring in presentations that were timely and interesting and and I can't think of any off the top of my head, but the talks and the speakers that they would bring in were very intriguing and interesting, and I just think a lot of that is they wanted to nurture the community.
we had a wonderful sisterhood, but I think Beth Sholom has a very good working sisterhood too. But,
And you mentioned, because I didn't know that you converted, but one of the things I loved when I found out when I came to Ohev is that it was a high percentage of folks that were not born Jewish, but converted to Judaism. And it says a lot about a synagogue that is where those people are.
Actually, let's dive into that one, because that's an interesting thing. So Charity, I'm gonna have to look back towards you on that to start that part of the conversation. But obviously, your husband is with Ohev. But can you describe anything that was part of the process of the conversion that Ohev drew you in towards, or why you went that route? And then we'll open it up. The rest of.
Yeah, I think just seeing Sam's family and his grandma and how it was such a tight-knit community and a synagogue, and I think with Rabbi White as well, I think Rabbi White's just captivating, and he's really engaging, and I just knew that I was like, okay, this is a good home that I could be at. And I think it's just that feeling of kind of like what Sam said, just very familial and welcoming. And when you kind of find that, I think you decide that, okay, this could be a place that I could be at for a long time. So the conversion process was great. It took, I think, about a year, but we had to do a half a year because we were getting ready to move to Buffalo. So I had to condense my courses and then go a lot faster through that. But the way that I think the Kansas City Jewish Federation sets it up is that when you do your conversion classes, you visit each synagogue to get a feel for the community, for everything that's there, and we would do different classes there. And the best ones were always felt like Ohev, and just bonding with Rabbi White, and he mentored me a lot through that process. So it was a great experience. It was a lot to learn, and it was I think Ohev just had a smaller group a close knit family feel that I hadn't felt in any of the other synagogues.
You know, I'm humbled by people who can like decide to do it, and then that's kind of was a little bit behind my adult bat mitzvah that I had. I kind of was like, wait, I'm about to turn 40, and I never had a bat mitzvah, although I did all those years at Sunday school, and my kids are right behind me, and I had the same kind of, I worked with Sivia, I worked with Scott, and you know, would learn to read Hebrew, because in theory I was learning when I was little, when I was growing up in LA, but I didn't really ever learn anything, so.
And I think Ohev instilled a sense of Jewish identity too that was unique. Even my daughter Emily, when she was deciding to get married, her current husband, she wanted to ensure that he would convert to Judaism, which he eventually did. And so even though there was a lack of observance necessarily, there's an identity that I think the Ohev community created. It was unique.
I mean, if you say you want to do something.
For the 130th, we had a comedy treat
Yes,
come in.
the 130th.
And that was a fun event. It was kind of exciting to have an opportunity to provide the entertainment and at the same time create kind of a meaningful show for people celebrating a synagogue that has a history of 130 years.
You were in charge of that.
And Michelle and I were co-chairs of that group. But I think that's an interesting aspect of Ohev is that you can have people like myself, really, who have no real experience doing a co-chair of any event. You know, but if you don't have a lot of people who can step up to the plate to do things, then everyone has a certain sense of responsibility. And I think the size of the synagogue created that sense of responsibility to provide your input, and you learn new things by having that opportunity. Where in a larger congregation, you would get lost in the mix. I can remember, I mean, even in Hebrew school, I remember, as I think about this now, to address your question, like when I was studying for the bar mitzvah, I had no voice and could not sing. And so Rabbi Pillay said, just read it. And that's kind of stayed with me over time. That I shouldn't just start singing. I need to just read things. But you know, then some of the lessons, you know, like learning Hebrew when you're young, and we would have competitions in class about who can find this word first. You know, and so I can see how that translates today. You know, when you're in services and they're reading along, you're trying to figure out where are they, you know, on this page. And the competition we had when we were even younger persists to today. About I could remember the challenge of trying to find that word in that place. It was really brilliant teaching, actually.
I remember the very last thing that just came to mind. I remember how groundbreaking it was when Ohev announced that we were getting an elevator in the building.
That's right.
It was an announcement on the Bima during Saturday services. Folks were getting an elevator. It's happening, and then it got installed, and it was like, oh, a big, you know, almost like a ribbon cutting of it. And it would take about 5 minutes for it to go up. And
Not that slow.
Yeah, it was in use, that's for sure.